Welcome to the Time Has Come podcast. My name is Graham Wardle, and thank you so much for joining me on another episode of the show. Today we have David Avocado Wolfe on the podcast, and I'm very excited to share this interview with you all. We talk about his latest film, 1111 Iceland. We talk about spring water. We talk about how to connect deeper with your food. We talk about earthing and grounding. We talk about how David overcomes his fears. All very interesting topics. I love chatting with David. He is known around the world for how he helps people reconnect to their food, reconnect to the earth, and move towards what he calls noble living. So the time has come for us to welcome David Wolfe to the podcast. David, how you doing today?
I'm literally doing the best ever. Thanks for asking.
The best ever. Oh, awesome. Well, this is something that I loved about your film, 1111 Iceland, was you said the best day ever. This was a mantra that you used I'm assuming you start your day with this. You kind of prep yourself. Is that something you do every day?
Every day it comes up, and it started sometime in my very early teens. Like probably the first reference to it that I remember seeing was probably maybe when I was 15, and me and my friends everything was the best ever, and we just that was our thing, and it somehow morphed. Like if we filmed something, it was the best tape ever. If we recorded something, it was the best recording ever. That was the kind of talk we had when we were kids. But then eventually the best day ever kind of grew out of that and became the mantra of my whole life. I've been literally, I can remember 15 years old. So it's like 35 years now.
Best day ever. I love it. It was great and inspired me too. And it is also like a focal point, right? It is something that you can think about and focus on. And no matter what's going on, for me, it was kind of like, how can you refocus this? Even if there's something, if it's a cloudy, rainy day, or if maybe something didn't go your way, where's the silver lining? Where's the blessing and hidden in this? How can this still be the best day ever? And that's something that I was like, yeah, man, I love that. That's really cool. So thank you for sharing that. I have so many questions for you. I know you have a wealth of information to share with people. You speak around the world. You help so many different people getting in touch with nutrition, getting in touch with themselves, and in touch with the earth. That's what 1111 Iceland is all about, your new film. And we'll share a little trailer with everybody near the end of the podcast and give people a little teaser of that. It's a really good film, and I really enjoyed it too. I've always wanted to go to Iceland. It's almost like a little bit of like a travel commercial for Iceland because you make it look so magical. And it was a great film. So we'll play a little bit of that at the end of the episode. But first, I really wanted to talk to you about water, because this is something that I have been interested in when I first heard about natural spring water. For my listeners, they know that I've worked on a show called Heartland out in Calgary, Alberta, and there is a spring just on your way out to Canmore, and you pull over the side of the road and you can get natural spring water. And the first time I'd heard of it, I was like, oh, what? Like you can drink spring water? Like, are you going to die? Like, is there stuff in it? Like, is it okay? And I finally found it and I drank some of the spring water and I was like, what is going on right now? Like this tastes amazing. So tell me a little bit about the power and the magic of spring water and why it's so powerful for our bodies.
Well, check out this magic. Check out this synchronicity. I was at Canmore Springs yesterday,
Oh,
and
really?
I pulled 50 gallons of spring water out of that spring yesterday on a water fast. That was day 3. Today's day 4 for me on this water fast, and that's how into water I am. I mean, I just love the whole concept of drinking more water, being more hydrated. Geez, what a good idea! It's a great idea, and originally got inspired to start looking at springs, especially cold springs. Hot springs is an easy one. It's so great. Just get in. It's absolutely an awesome way to spend an evening in a hot springs. But a cold spring is a totally different phenomenon. And I first got inspired after spending a night, actually several nights in a hot springs outside of Las Vegas. And I came back to my friend's apartment and also on a water fast. Interesting. This is many years ago, 25 years ago. And when you're on a water fast, for anybody who's ever done any kind of like juice fasting or water, if you ever change your diet around like that and just go with less, you can sometimes really have like a lot of energy for reading and studying. And that's really what happened on that 4th day on that particular fast. And I found Viktor Schauberger's work, and he was a real inspiration to me. That was an incredible find to find that book. I'm a reader. I love reading. I'm a big believer in reading. And I know that reading can change your destiny. It can really change it can change your life. Because if suddenly you get a good tip from a book, you're like, oh my God, I could have spent 10 years doing the wrong thing. Anyway, Viktor Schauberger got me going to springs and hunting down the source of springs all over the world, which I did for literally 25 straight years. And I all of 5 continents. I've hunted spring water everywhere you can imagine, from Bali to all over Australia, all over Canada, all over the United States, all over Mexico, all over South America, South Africa. I've been to a spring in South Africa that is very close to where people believe humans came from, probably the closest in Mpumalanga in
Mm.
South Africa, and all over Europe, everywhere. And it's an incredible hobby and a really cool thing to check out. If you ever see a spring or find a spring, it's a real treat.
100%. And what are some of the why is it so powerful? Is it because it's coming from the earth? Is it because you're out in nature? Like I don't know what it was, but the water tasted it just tasted better, and I felt like it was like full of light or like energy. Like it felt like I was eating something really energetic, but I was just drinking water. Like what is that?
There's something to the elements of the earth, right? And it could be that when cold spring water comes out of the ground, it has a negative charge. It's actually a concentration of hydrogen. And it might even come out as a little rivulet, and then suddenly it turns into a creek, and like right there in front of your eyes. And that's because that hydrogen, as it hits the atmosphere, produces water. But as soon as it hits the oxygen in the atmosphere, there's suddenly more water there. That's a whole conversation, actually. That's part of the mystery of water. But there's a charge there, and actually a negative electrical charge. Generally, the Earth is negatively charged and the atmosphere is positively charged. That's the dynamic of heaven and
Mhm.
earth. And when you get to a spring, that's a concentration of that negative charge. So there's definitely something, actually many things going on. Now, I do want to mention, because people think, well, my God, what if there's like an amoeba in there or some kind of like, you know, leptosporidium or something crazy like that? Generally, the colder the water it is, the safer that water is. So generally, let's just say in Fahrenheit, if it's like 4 degrees centigrade coming out of the ground, that is the best darn thing ever. That's not going to have any bacteria in it. There's not going to be any life form in there. Generally, for most springs I've ever been to, even if they're much warmer than that, 8, 9, 10, 12 degrees centigrade, up 50, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, there's no bacteria when it comes out of the ground. The bacteria happens further down in the algae growth, and other organisms get into it, but the earth has purified it. So when you get to the source, you have good, clean water to drink. And that's an instinct that we have. Humans know that. We know that
Mm.
intuitively. And if, it's like a thing that we lost as we became civilized, because suddenly we had tap water, and everything was so much easier. But to hunt down wild spring water and find it in nature is truly one of the most extraordinary experiences. And that's why I'm hooked on it. I've been hooked on it for 25 years.
I can see why. For me, I've only been drinking, every chance I get when I find a spring or if I hear about one, I have to go search it out, and it's exciting. And to drink it, it's an experience, and that's what I want to encourage people if they get a chance to do some research. Like you said, David, that it's safer if it's colder, and also you want to be. I think it would probably be wise too to pay attention to what's in the surrounding area. Maybe if there's a farm or something with some runoff, I'm assuming that might potentially cause some dangers, in the soil and stuff that stuff might leak through and into the spring possibly. Would I be correct in assuming
Yeah,
that?
you're correct. Absolutely. And one spring comes to mind when I was in LA one time, and I was doing a lot of work. You know that I was big with Nutribullet. I helped develop that product, the blender, and I used to go over to the Nutribullet offices, and almost it was like my job. I went there sometimes 5 days a week, and we did this project across the street at Uni High School, which is a very famous high school in Los Angeles, and that's where the Doors went to. If you remember the rock and
Oh
roll band,
yeah,
the
cool.
Doors,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
went there, and we do a project with the kids, getting to blend food and blending superfoods, and just having a lot of fun with that. And one day I was in there, and the teacher said, "Hey, do you want to do the talk today at the spring?" I was like, "Wait, we're in Santa Monica, Los Angeles. What are you talking about, spring? Like spring water bubbling out of the ground?" She says, "Yeah." And I said, "On this property?" And she says, "Yeah." And I
Oh
was like,
wow.
"Take me there." So it was the most crazy thing. There's 4 or 5 bubbling springs coming right out of the ground, right between Wilshire Boulevard and Santa Monica, right there at Westgate. It's just incredible. And it was like one of those bizarre moments, but that told me something about things you think are far away, or things you think of like, oh, we don't have that here. It's near. It's never far. It's always
Hmm.
near. So I want to put that out there for people. If you think it's a faraway fantasy, no, it's there. But the problem with that spring is they put too much industry on top of it. In fact, it was a gas station and a dry cleaner that had some contaminant that got into the groundwater, got into that spring, unfortunately.
Oh no, spoiled it.
Spoiled it. But yeah, it's still beautiful. I mean, it's just a beautiful phenomenon to be around, but you can't drink it.
Yeah. Well, what do you recommend for people that are just starting the health journey? They want to get more in contact with the earth. They want to be more in tune with their bodies. They want to take a step in nutrition, but it's overwhelming. There's so many supplements and so many things to start trying and doing, and they don't know where to look. What do you say to those people when they're just starting on this journey? Where do they start, and what's something simple they can get in touch with and they can see benefits from right away?
Over the years, I've been a vegetarian for over 30 years. That's just my own personal choice. My best friends are meat eaters. I'm not partisan in any way, but I do think that one thing that all of the people in my field, whether they're a vegetarian or a vegan, or they love their meat or they love their chicken or whatever, the one thing in our community that we really share is that we're all qualitarians.
Mm.
So we seek out really the best, and that's the first step. Is you really got to have something inside of you that activates and says, I deserve the best. I deserve really good quality food. I deserve a good quality life. I deserve a good quality house. I deserve a good quality partner. That's just a self-esteem thing, and I love bringing that into the self-esteem equation. It's like, give yourself really good food. You'll get the results. You are what you eat is not going away. It's not
Yeah.
going away anytime soon. So if you can get organic, or you can know the farmer, or you can get to a farmer's market, this is a great way to get connected. And that's something that, strangely, in my life, I had just grown up growing trees. I mean, I started growing avocado trees in 1978.
Oh, cool.
Can you believe that? And so I was lucky because I was already oriented to farmers markets and stuff. But if you're new to it, my God, is that fun? Farmers markets are so fun, to meet the farmer and just find out
Mhm.
directly, like, hey, how is this grown? Where is it grown? Tell me about this. How did you grow this? What do you think about growing this? What do you think about the quality? What's the best thing you have here? These are the great things to ask at the farmers market.
So getting connected to your food, getting connected to the people that grow it or growing it yourself is a great way to establish a better bond with your food and the quality of food, and therefore, generate that health within your body, generate that appreciation within you is when you take the time and you invest in learning about your food. And like you said, I like that term, qualitarian, finding good quality food. It's like the long-term thing, right? It's like if you invest in yourself and quality food, then you won't have those health issues in the future. But if you shortcut and you take the easy route now, then you're going to have those problems in the future.
We call that, there's a great term for that, a great Western term, and it's really, I think it's a metaphor of all Western society, which is the short term gain for the long term tragedy. That's the Faustian bargain, based on the great mythology of Faust. The Dr. Faust who sells his soul to the devil for fame and fortune. You,
Mm.
this is a very Western thing, and we have to be careful about it. And the way we do that is we just spend a little bit more time on quality versus quantity, and that is really that's a fundamental life skill.
Amen. I love that. Does this connect to your concept of noble living? This is something that I'd never heard before, but that you mentioned in 1111 Iceland. And I was like, I've never heard this term before. Is that connected to noble living?
100%. You nailed it exactly, or I should say 111%. It's great. I mean, it's such a great thing to like in the environments that I live. Like, I have a farm in Ontario, Canada, and I've been there 15, 16 years, and I've been in Hawaii for 15, 16 years. So between those two farms, it's just noble living. We're trying to bring the best of all the knowledge, the best of our growing possibilities, the best trees, the best genetics we can get our hands on, of avocados and chocolate trees and apples and oranges and grapefruits and all the great things that we grow. And that's noble living. It's just a sensational feeling. It's a bliss, actually. To be really honest with you, it's actually like it's like a connection you feel with your loved ones. It's a connection you feel with your pets. It's I feel that with my land.
That's amazing, and that is something that I've been inspired about, and that's something that I wanna create as well in my life, is to have that connection because in the small ways that I've been connected to, some natural spring water, or some fresh food from the farmer's market, and you feel so much gratitude and so much appreciation for it, and then, like you're saying, if you have a piece of land that you can connect with in that way too, that just magnifies that feeling even more, so I can only imagine what that must be like for you on your land out in Ontario. It must be awesome.
It's awesome. I mean, because we're in with the animals and we don't have fences. I can't put a fence around. There's too much land. It's like you're in the middle of the
Yeah.
forest. And so you're in there with them. And it's just cool to develop that relationship with the plants and the animals in the wild forest. That is one of the most sensational things in life. And it's something we all had that going back like hundreds of years or 1,000 years ago or longer, and we didn't know what. Now we've lived in cities, and then and that's a great thing too, because that builds community and it builds knowledge. Because when you're out there isolated on a farm 200 years ago, you couldn't have the knowledge like you have now, but now we get the best of both. That's what's so
Mhm.
cool about now.
Do you see that is a trend that is going to, continue where people are going to move out of cities, or is it gonna remain more polarized?
Great question. I was very fortunate. I grew up all over the United States, and my dad's from New York City originally. And one of the things of being a New Yorker is that you have your place in the city and you have your place out of the city. And up in upstate New York, Lake Placid is where we had our place back then when we lived over there. And so this was this wonderful dynamic that got set into my consciousness very young. And I recommend it for people is if you're in a city right now, you want to make an escape plan and have a place out of the city. Now, if crazy stuff happens in a city or it just becomes too toxic to be there, or just, I don't know, there's great things about cities and bad things, then you can move to, you have your other place. But then after a while being in the woods, you might get sick of that. You might go, I'm going to go back to the city. So that logic has really been with me. It's an old New Yorker logic, and it works, and it's smart.
I like it too, and that's something that I've thought about is as much as I enjoy the city and I enjoy the new inventions and things and people you get to meet and all the different things that are readily available, I also really enjoy the silence. I really enjoy being out in nature. And to find that balance, I think is for everybody's a little different, a little unique for them individually, what it is for people to how they find that balance. But yeah, I think that's a great idea to have an escape, to have a retreat, a sanctuary. And maybe that's just a park, for a long time that's what it was for me. It was just going out to the park, going out to the woods and walking through the trees and just being quiet, not plugging in any headphones or listening to music, just being in nature, taking a break from all the chaos. I think that's really important. And it also brings up this idea that I know you're into, which is grounding, which is, getting your feet connected to the earth. So that has, I believe, a similar effect to the negative charge of water, but putting your feet on the earth, it does something similar, does it not? It grounds you in that way.
Yeah, this is a really interesting discovery of a friend of mine, Clint Ober, who he was in the cable industry. When they first started laying cable for the cable television industry across America, that was his job. That's what he did. That's where he made his money. And one day he was driving around and he just looked over. And one of the most important things about cable TV is that the cable itself is grounded. It's earthed. Your house is grounded. All the plugs and everything are all grounded in everybody's house. And at least that's law in the United States since 1970. It's been law in Canada almost as long. That's that third prong of the plug, actually, in every house. You see it, there's three prongs. That third one is the ground. And that's very important. It prevents electrical fires and it can neutralize a spark. So one time he's just driving along. He sees this kid in big, thick Nikes, big sole, big rubber sole,
Hmm.
and just thought, my God, I wonder if there's some, problems that are created by us not being grounded. And that's what started off a revolution that, in his case, he funded 13 university studies on grounding. Like, is it okay to be in shoes or not? Or what happens if your feet are bare on the ground versus a person who's in shoes? And he found out major things. I mean, this is a very big discovery. One of the most important discoveries, I think, of our time, and that is, again, that the earth is negatively charged, the atmosphere is positively charged. And if you're constantly never grounded, so you're always in shoes, you're on carpet, you're not actually touching the earth, then you accumulate positive charge. You
Mm.
actually become an island of positive charge. You become a dirty capacitor, so to speak. And at some point, you have to discharge it, or you can develop. For example, when you work on a computer, the computer is throwing off a huge amount of electricity, especially if that computer's plugged in. I do want to emphasize that's one of the things we learned with the grounding work and actually testing. If I'm grounded when I'm on the computer, and Clint Ober eventually developed a whole system to plug into that third prong of a plug, so you could have a little mat. I've been using those for 15 years. You could
Oh,
have a
yes,
little
I know what you're
mat.
talking about.
Yeah, you may have seen that, and you could put your feet on it, or you could have it on your computer. If I'm on that computer and I'm grounded like that, the amount of electricity is vastly less. But if I'm not grounded, it could even be 100 times less, 100 times. If I'm not grounded and I've never been grounded, I've been working on the computer, then eventually it starts frying your hands, your wrists, your elbows, and this to me is the cause of carpal tunnel syndrome. It's the main problem.
Oh, interesting.
Now, I have put this message out there probably more than anybody in the world. And I've had people who, like a friend of mine's New York City famous cartoonist, he's got to work 16 to 18 hours a day drawing. And he was getting fried because you got to be in
Mm.
front of the computer. It's in 16 to 18 hours. Imagine. As soon as he got grounded, everything changed. He became more creative. He wasn't getting fried in front of that computer. So if you do a lot of computer work, what Clint Ober developed through earthing is a key technology. Plus, you always have the ability to, and this I do this every day, to go outside and touch the earth barefoot. I go out in the snow barefoot. I go
Nice.
swimming in yeah, hot springs, but also cold springs. I'll go into cold rivers, cold lakes. And the colder that it is, that more that negative charge, like we talked about before, the quicker it grounds you. Now, if you get into a cold ocean, because it's salty, it's even quicker because it's electrolytic.
Okay, okay. Now what about, taking a shower? I love taking showers in the morning. What does
Shower
that ground
grounds
me?
you. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, good.
Yes. And this is why, we did a lot of research on this. I was really deeply involved with Clint Ober for a lot of years. We did research on this too. This is fascinating. The reason why you get your ideas in the shower is because you're grounded.
Oh.
And this is, my in the reference of my cartoonist friend, that's something that really changed for him. He found deeper levels of inspiration because he was always grounded.
Whoa. Wait a second. Wait. So what's happening is your body is being exposed to, whether it be your computer, all different things in your environment, all these positive electrons, and they have nowhere to go. So they're building up in your body. And
Right.
then by touching your feet to the earth, or by taking a shower, or getting in, the ocean, you are discharging that sort of buildup of electrons.
You got it.
And then from that, there's some sort of rebalancing that allows you to tune into more creativity or more inspiration, or some sort of reharmonization with your environment.
Yes, there's something to being in a negatively charged environment. For example, like in Calgary, you mentioned you're near Calgary. Calgary gets a Chinook weather pattern, and that's kind of why it can warm up suddenly in the middle of the winter, and suddenly it's like 5 or 8 or 10 degrees centigrade when it should be like
Mhm.
minus 15 or something. And that has to do with too much positive charge in the atmosphere. Now, what that's going to cause is a lot of static electricity, and you're going to be like, "Oh, geez, I got a little static on me." You touch a doorknob and it snaps on you. This can actually change our mood and our behavior. It alters mood and behavior. That's been proven. It was originally proven in a book called The Ion Effect, which was written in the 1970s. Great book. You can ever dig one up. I dig them up in used bookstores sometimes and just get back into it, read the whole book. You can read the whole book in one sitting. And it has to do with the ratio of positive ions in the atmosphere. Again, a Chinook is going to have more positive charge. A typical cold winter or something is going to have more negative charge. That's why it's like nice to breathe. It's crisp air and it
Ah, yeah,
feels
yeah,
good.
yeah.
And
Okay.
this can change our mood. So the overall balance of negative to positive electricity, or the balance of the heavens and the earth in our body, is a real thing.
Wow, I love that. That's great, David. So this brings me to another question that I have that I love to ask people is the feeling of why you do what you do. What gets you out of bed in the morning? What is it about your job that you walk away and you go, "You know what? This is why I love what I do." What is that for you? What is that moment? What is that feeling?
Well, I'm a people person, and I just love helping people. And I was taught by great people. I was taught by masters how to run events. And one of the things that one of my friends taught me when I first got going, he was an old timer. I got to call him. He's been on my mind. Old timer from Santa Barbara. He ran many events for like Ram Dass and spiritual teachers from the 60s and 70s. And he's like, one of the things he taught me is like, you never leave the event. You hang in there with those people all the way. They're there to see you. They're there to hear what you have to say. You hang in there with them, even if it takes all night.
Mm.
And I really took that to heart, and that's always been my feeling. Is like, there's nowhere to go. I'd rather be with the people there. What am I going to do? Go home and do emails, or what am I going to do? That's more fun. So that is something that I really love about my job, is that I get to meet people, I get to interact with people, I get to serve them, and help them with what I've learned from the great teachers who taught me.
It's a connection, a feeling of connected to people, a sharing, a serving with new people, with all walks of life, and being that sort of conduit of information and of inspiration.
Yes, in fact, I've got it down to two words that I put into a lot of my memes, and that is loving assistance.
Nice, nice. Loving assistance, beautiful. So, David, you strike me as a very positive person. Even the best day ever mantra, and your energy, and the way you speak about health and nutrition and being connected. How does David deal with fears? How do you deal with those times where things are not going your way? Well, how does David overcome or dance with his fears?
What a great question. One of the things I do is I do use that mantra. Okay, this is the best ever. Somehow there's a silver lining here, as you were referencing earlier, and I thought that was really well. You really understood the concept of the best day ever. You can find a way to turn it around. There is a way always to turn it around. One of the things that I've learned over my life, and it started when I was 14, is the power of goal setting and writing things down. And basically, the way I read it is that the our world, this realm that we're in, is really actually a literate realm. It's less mathematical than we think. It's really reading, writing, and arithmetic in that order. And so I would sit down when I would have things I'd want to overcome or challenges to overcome, and I would just literally write it how I want it to come out. Like, almost, even though it's goal setting, I'm really just writing the story of my life how I want it to come out. That works. I've been doing that for so many years. I've been doing it for over 35 years.
Is that like, are you like writing it like a script, like you're writing a movie, or what do you mean, like journaling it, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I'm journaling it. So I'm journaling it, but I'm chunking it down to simple stuff. So I'm not like writing like the sky is blue and the flowers were yellow and there was David out there in the meadow. It's not that, I'm
Not
not
like
like
that.
writing a novel, but I'm just writing it how I want it to be. I'm writing for example, really good thing to do is to write what kind of a partner you have. Like, what do you want? And to write it down. And doing that over all these years has really done something to me. It really has. And I've noticed, this is the thing, this is a long time I've been doing this, 35 years. That's a long time. I've noticed that reality bends to it.
Hmm. This is so exciting. I love this topic. Yeah. So I've talked about this with some people. It's like almost like you're shifting timelines. Like there's different. Like I can't prove this or disprove this, but one of my theories is that, or one of my ideas that I've heard that I like and I play with, is that there's multiple versions of you, and that you can tune into a different version, but you have to align yourself energetically, emotionally, spiritually with that timeline, and you can bend reality. You can shift. A coincidence happens. You're like, what? What just happened? Is that similar to what you're talking about with bending reality?
Yeah, it is similar. And I've talked to Amazonian shamans about this, literally about that subject. And one of the great Amazonian medicines that I really love is the Cambo frog medicine, which is a ritual that you go through in the Amazon with the native people there, where they take a frog. They don't hurt the frog, but the frog protects itself by a film that forms on its skin, and they'll scrape that with a piece of wood, and then they burn you, and they put that film into your skin, and
Whoa.
it's an incredible ceremony. It really is, especially when you do it with true native people. I actually, the last time I did it was with a native gal who had grown up with it, and it was so good. The ceremony is so powerful. It's a very intense experience. But what they say about it is that when you go through that experience, it's kind of a nauseating experience and a metamorphosis experience. But when you go through it, and you come out the other side, you're in alignment with the best version of you and the best timeline. That's how they talk about it. So you reminded me of that.
Cool, very cool. I've heard about that. I've heard people is that similar to when people, like, lick frogs? Is that the same frog when they
It's
lick
no,
them?
that's a
That's a different one?
toad, and you don't
It's a
want to
toad,
ever
okay.
lick a frog or a toad.
Well,
Just to
I don't
point
know.
that out, there could be the reason why these animals, these amphibians, the frogs and the toads, have these exudates of their skin is to protect them from predators. And that film, like I'm thinking of the Bufo salvarius toad of the desert southwest of the United States, is an amazing toad because I used to run a hot springs in that area in Arizona, and there was toads there, and they were big, huge. But geez, if a dog tries to bite down on that toad, it will be paralyzed before it can crunch.
Oh, whoa.
That's how serious of a medicine it is. That's why you should never lick a toad.
Right. Okay. Well, good. And that brings me to my next question for you. What are some things to be careful of or to be very cautious around in this world of reconnecting to the earth? We talked a little bit about potential spring water contamination, but what about health trends or things that are going on in the health world that you've seen that you're like, you know what, this is dangerous. I really recommend people don't get on this trend.
One of the things I am just oriented towards because I like to live radiation free part of the day, which means I'm away from my phone, I'm away from devices. So there's a biohacking trend right now, which is let's wear all these devices and all this electronic gadgets and measure every little thing. That's just to me, it's just a little bit overkill of like, look, when you have your time in nature, be in nature, put the phone away, put your little biohacking little wristwatch away, take those things and just put them away and just be in nature without the radiation. And
Hmm.
I think the amount of radiation that we're being exposed to, especially in light of my research with Clint on grounding over a decade, it really is an issue. It really is an issue. So my pleading is to everyone listening is make some time that you're completely away from your phone. Make some time that's not even on you, that there's no device on you. And so you can have that original human experience, which is our birthright. We're supposed to have that experience with nothing, right? None of this
Yeah.
technology. Give yourself that gift. And I find it really helps me. In fact, just before talking to you, I went out on a walk for an hour and I leave my phone behind. I leave all of it behind.
I got to do more of that. I know that when I do it, I feel so much better. And the other day, I went out with some friends. We jumped in the river here on Vancouver Island and just reconnected to that really cold water.
Good
And I
job.
hiked through the woods, and it was beautiful. You just feel so much better, and so like it's a reset. It's like all the stress and everything melts away. You're really present because you're freezing, and then you just become okay with that, and you rest into that feeling, that intense feeling of cold and no technology, nothing around to distract you. So I think that's a good piece of advice for people to think about is how can we take some time away from our electronics and take a break so our bodies aren't constantly bombarded by these different electromagnetic fields and radiation and such. So I've read a bit about that. Is that something that is toxic to the cell or to the cells in our body? Like, what are the effects of constant exposure to these fields?
Great question. It's a threshold phenomenon that's different for every person. Some people can handle more of it. Some people are super electrosensitive. And our
Hmm.
culture, we're just so almost fascist about the way we are with our technology. We're just going to get the next one, and then we're going to get the next one. We're going to get the next one. But we got to remember there's people in our society who can't handle all the radiation, and they've been pushed aside by our whole society, right? No one talks about them, the electrosensitive people. And I know those people because they come to my events. So I
Mm.
know that the percentage of that population is getting bigger because we've got so many more devices, and it's hitting a threshold dose for people like their body starts to go, look, this is enough. It's too much. And so the answer is, yeah, this radiation is toxic to cells and it's toxic to the human body, especially at a threshold dose. And that's why I'm always recommending, hey, go jump in that cold river. Hey, go walk barefoot. Hey, get away from your devices, leave everything behind you. Go walk for an hour with nothing, just so you can reset and allow your cells to kind of get away from that pressure, because it is a
Mm.
pressure on our
Mm.
system.
Is it similar to, would it be the equivalent of like, you're not going to get cancer if you walk by somebody smoking, but if you're in a small, tight space and everybody in the room is smoking and you are as well, you're going to increase your chances tenfold.
Right. It's exactly that. It's just threshold dose. It's like
Right.
there's a thing in science called the LD50, which is the lethal dose 50%, LD50. And that's the amount of a substance per kilogram or per gram, or depending on the weight of the organism you're testing, that is lethal to 50% of 100. So 50 out of 100 would die. Like if you took 100 mice, what's the lethal dose that's going to kill 50 of them? That's called the LD50. And that is the standard for poisoning, for example, on
Mm.
numerous drugs, numerous chemicals. They always talk about the LD50, and that's interesting because not everyone will die, but right? It's a crazy thing. That's why I'm a vegetarian. I don't want to harm animals. I don't do experiments on animals, but I just find it interesting that it does come down to really a ratio. Isn't that
Mm.
interesting? So some of us are going to be on one side and we're going to be able to withstand it, but not everybody's like that.
I've also heard that people that have, a plate, like a metal plate put in their body, that these radiations can wreak havoc on them because they become like an antenna to these fields. Is that true?
Good question. I don't know if that's true or not. I've heard all kinds of rumors over the years and throughout my life of people getting a filling and suddenly being able to tune into radio stations or hearing
Oh,
radio
really?
waves. I've heard that, and who knows? There's probably research on it, but there's definitely something to be said when you have metal in your body that it too is like a capacitor, meaning it absorbs energy and it releases energy. And my general feeling is if you have metal hardware in your leg or something, you broke your leg, over time you eventually want to get that out.
Mm.
It's not healthy to have metal in your body if it can be avoided. In some cases, it can't be avoided, but if it can be avoided, we want to avoid it.
Yeah. And also, I've heard you speak a lot about mushrooms, and that's actually probably the first introduction to you that I ever had was your passionate expression of your joy for mushrooms and chaga mushrooms. And I know all different types of mushrooms, but there is one particular that helps with radiation poisoning or removal toxins in the body. Is that not true?
Well, chaga mushroom has a very long history of being radioprotective. I would say that's true of all of the great polypores, the great medicinal mushrooms in the wild state. Now, when they're lab grown, if they're grown on rice, if they're grown on wheat, or they're grown on some other kind of grain, or they're grown on hemp, they're still great medicines, but they don't have that property because the primary cause of that property is the substance melanin. And that's one of the reasons why when you look at a chaga mushroom, which looks like a black mass, like this looks like a cancer coming out of a birch tree, that black is the actual melanin, and that's the radioprotective quality that's in there. It's
Mm.
not the only one, but it's the
Yeah.
main one. And reishi mushroom has plenty of melanin, and they all do. The red belted polypore, which grows over there in Vancouver Island, there's plenty of it there. There's plenty of great medicinal mushrooms that are rich in this compound. So they all really have that. But chaga is the king. It's the king on the chessboard.
So that's something that people can, if they are sensitive to these fields or if they're getting a lot of time in front of computers and they can't ground or they're still working on this is something that they can try in the meantime and see how it impacts them is to get some chug tea kind of thing. Is that
Yes,
what you would recommend?
absolutely. Yeah, I'm a massive fan of medicinal mushroom teas. They're delicious. They're easy to drink. They're not bitter. They're somewhat buttery and sweet. It was a revelation, I have to tell you, when I first got into the medicinal mushroom teas, because I started like everybody else. Like I was like cornered in a health food store by one of my friends who's a health food maniac like me. And he's like, you got to get into reishi mushroom. This is like 20 years ago. And I was like, okay, I'll get into reishi mushroom. So I bought, what he was selling me. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take these capsules. And that step by step, I started getting deeper into it, deeper into it. Next thing you know, I'm out in the forest hunting this stuff. And it was a tremendous metamorphosis. It's a metamorphosis that can happen to anybody listening right now, where you go from, oh, okay, I'll try this, or I'll get some of this product on the internet, or get it at a health food store, and then it transforms
Mm.
into a vocation, a infatuation. And that's where it is for me, because I am in love with medicinal mushrooms. I think it's one of the best medicines, one of the best things to drink. It just makes me feel amazing. One of the most alkaline substances out there, these medicinal mushrooms, especially chaga mushroom. And it just has this tremendous history, 5,000 years of human medicinal use that we know of.
Wow. Wow. I love that. I've been taking lion's mane mushroom for when I'm working on set and I have to memorize a bunch of lines because they said on the box, it's lion's mane helps with memory and mood. And I thought, oh, I'll give it a shot. And I was actually I thought it would be more like a not a placebo, but I thought it would be kind of more like just healthier. I didn't actually think I would feel a difference. And then I'm like, oh, wow, this actually impacts my life. And I've had a fascination with mushrooms as well. Mycelium, which is the web that mushrooms come from, the sort of the roots, so to speak, that's the largest known organism on the planet. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say that's true. I mean, you might be able to make a suggestion that like a giant cluster of trees because of the mass, the biomass, but then in that biomass of the trees are the mushrooms too. They're in there. They're in the wood already. They're built in. It's really it's not too far of a stretch to say that most medicinal mushrooms are actually part of the tree's immune system. That's not a stretch.
Oh,
That's really true, and they're in the tree already. So when the tree dies, it actually comes out. Or if the tree's injured, you'll see, and a part of it dies, but the rest of it's living. You might see something come out there, or you'll see medicinal mushrooms come out of living trees, and all of the above.
wow. I've also, and again, I'm just checking with you on these things because I've heard a lot of this stuff, but then I'm like, I don't know if it's true or not. But I assume that because of all your research and all your knowledge, you might be able to give me some more insight. But I've heard that mycelium, in some way underneath the forest floor, that if like an animal is walking across and then is to fall over and die, or is to curl up and they know they're going to die, and they spend their last moments curled up on the forest floor, that mycelium can sense that pressure and it grows towards it, anticipating.
I would say it's true from my experience. And the reason why I'm going to tell you why. The reason why I know that's true is because I've been tricked by mushrooms before. I've been in a situation hunting reishi mushroom, for example, where I knew it was in a certain area. I was with a gal. She's like, I know it's here. And we were just completely like dumbfounded as to what the heck happened. Like, we're not in the wrong place. This is the right place. And just at that moment of giving up, just at that moment of like dropping your head because of failure and defeat, just as we dropped our head after hours of looking for the stand of reishi mushroom, boom, there it was at our feet. The tree had fallen over. And as we put our head down, like, oh God, we're not going to find it. There it was at our feet. It all, like it just waited for that moment of defeat before it was like, okay, here I am.
Wow.
Little things like that where you go, I don't know if that's just a coincidence. But we know from studying the mycelium that the mycelium contains neurotransmitters. And I suspect that the concentration of neurotransmitters in mycelium means that the mushroom can think. And we have
Mm.
evidence of that. We have evidence that mushrooms can solve a maze, for example, and can solve puzzles. And in some cases, solve a maze better than a mouse.
I have never heard this before. This is crazy. So mushrooms can solve mazes and puzzles?
Yes, muzzle. Yes, they can. And so there's an intelligence there. One of the things I think is happening right now to our whole entire civilization is that we're coming away from this idea that the world is dead. We're you know what I mean? Like the world doesn't have consciousness, or that
Mhm.
there's not consciousness in plants or animals or in rocks or rivers or springs. And we're coming more back to the living world where we're like, whoa, it actually has a consciousness. There's something going on here. Maybe it doesn't register on like, okay, it can't read Shakespeare, but it can do other things, and can
Mhm.
do it really well. And this is something that you participate in when you're in nature. Now, I will say this too, having been a mushroom hunter, when you're barefoot, there's some sense also that the that connects that forest, you feel it, and you feel it better when you're barefoot. The mycelium
Mm.
web, the web of roots, the web of the soil, the web of the water as it moves through the soil, something you feel and perceive better. We have a perception of this that when the shoes are on, it's not quite as sharp. I will say that for sure.
Mm. Now, what's that mushroom that takes over an ant's body and causes it to like crawl to the tropis tree and then it bursts out of its head? What is that one?
That's a cordyceps, and there are. I'm just going to go off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure there's at least 5,000 different types of cordyceps that they eat caterpillars. They'll eat insects. They are a really interesting group of
Do they eat
mushrooms.
humans?
Can they eat a human? Great question. Well, there are aggressive forms of fungi that have been found in nature, like in wild nature. I'm thinking of a particular, it was an incident where near the Grand Canyon where it was either a panther or a cougar. I think it was a cougar was completely taken over by some kind of a fungus, and a ranger found it. And you don't want to get anywhere near that because it can actually get to you. It can actually infect you. It can actually affect your immune system. And that was an interesting, just little aside that I had found at one point. So there are aggressive forms of fungi. There's definitely fungi that are harmful to humans. No question
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
Black mold, that kind of stuff.
But nothing that could like take over our brains and cause us to climb a tree so it can hit
Right.
us.
No, and not at that level. It's not that sophisticated. But I always think, when I study like Robert Sapolsky over at Stanford and his work on toxoplasmosis and parasites can definitely influence our mind. They can influence our decision making, and that's one of the reasons why I always spend every year. I always do a parasite cleanse. I take all the parasite herbs. That's Robert Sapolsky, and he spent over a decade studying toxoplasmosis. Very interesting research. Definitely recommend looking into his videos on YouTube.
What is toxoplasmosis? What does that word mean?
That's a type of parasite. It's a microorganism that is very prevalent in cats and mice, and it
Mm.
causes mice to do things that are very dangerous. For example, to be attracted to areas where there's cat urine. And what's happening there is the mouse is being influenced by the toxo to get into the cat, right? Because the cat's going to jump on that mouse and eat that mouse. Next, it's the cat's going to get the toxoplasmosis, which is what it wants. That's what the toxo wants. But it can get into humans too, and it can cause behavior issues where people do things that are very dangerous and too dangerous, and that has been noted. So that's a whole
Wow.
conversation, that area there, but it's an interesting one, and definitely one I recommend people look into.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that too, mushrooms also have the ability to clean up like oil spills, toxic spills. Isn't there a mushroom that can grow in an area if an area has been decimated by an oil spill? That there is a mushroom that can grow in there and clean up all those toxins and basically bring back the environment.
Yes, and that one is very familiar to me. I actually eat that one a lot. I like it a lot. We always collect it in the forest, and that one is pleurotus, or the oyster mushroom. And it
Mm.
grows on trees in the forest, but you can grow that mushroom on a toxic oil spill and it will eat it. It will convert the hydrocarbons into something that's non-toxic. And so it's very interesting, actually. That was Paul Stamets' research, that he was showing how this pile over here had this mushroom, this one had nothing, and this one had pleurotus. Pleurotus or oyster mushrooms, to me, they're one of the great ones. They're in the top 10 for sure of all medicinal mushrooms.
I love learning about things like this in nature and seeing how it all works together. And it gives me a feeling of like relief, like it's not like we're alone. Like there's all these organisms, all these life forms that are working together to bring harmony, to bring balance, and we just need to learn about them, appreciate them, and let them do their job. And we can really benefit and have much healthier, more balanced lives.
A friend of mine's his favorite phrase is, "There's no lie in nature. Everything is what it is," and so we will always find our answer because there's no lie there. There's going to be an answer. You just
Mm,
got to look hard.
I love that. Well, let's talk about 1111 Iceland, your new film, your document. It's a documentary. I guess you could call it a documentary. Yeah.
Documentary, travel log, adventure film, all of the above. Plus, I like to get slip in little messages and
Yeah.
show really epic footage.
Yeah, the footage was amazing. It reminded me of like a planet Earth, but then like an inspirational meditation on Iceland, on reconnecting to Earth and to all the different wonders and beauty of this planet, specifically in Iceland. And so, how did this 1111 Iceland film come to be? Where did this idea sprout from?
It's funny that you bring up planet Earth. I was in Amsterdam and I was trying to hunt down a cinematographer, like really a good one, to do this project with me in Iceland. And he showed up. His name is Yori Store, and he was one of the guys who was in BBC's Planet Earth.
Oh, cool.
He was one of the cinematographers in it. And so I saw his pedigree. I knew his boss, and I knew his boss's girlfriend, and that's how we met. And it was just a wonderful meeting in Amsterdam. And I laid out what I wanted to do, and he's like, "I can do it." And we became friends. Actually, we lived together for like a year. Actually, so I was in touch with him today. I mean, we're like best friends. It's just incredible, how fate brings people together.
Mm.
And we went to Iceland together with our whole team. We brought about 8 of us, and we just spent a month traveling around at all this great spots. And I've been going to Iceland for 20 years. So I do want to mention to anyone listening right now, I am totally in love with Iceland. I am totally in love with the people there. I will very likely be back there as soon as I can, and I very likely will spend at least once a year, every year, going to Iceland to see the different volcanoes and the incredible Arctic Ocean and the hot springs and the cold springs and the wonderful little towns. And it's just an amazing place. And so we got it. I think we captured it in our film, 1111 Iceland. And 1111 has to do with, it's like a portal. 1111 means a gateway. And that's really what it was for us. And so we didn't plan to call it 1111 Iceland. It's just kind of what happened as a result of completing the film.
Let's play for our audience here a little trailer for 1111 Iceland, and then we'll come back after that.
We live in a magical reality, and I have lived in that magical reality for probably 25 years, especially when I first got full raw food, went through all the cleansing, detox process, boom, came into the magical reality, been there ever since. All I've ever been doing is trying to communicate back to other people like, hey, look, here's the magical reality. It's always right in front of us all the time. It's always been there. We can never get away from it. It's just that we don't look at it, we don't observe it, or we bought into the scientism of our schooling that said, oh, it's not there, it doesn't exist. And we lost something as a result of that. Now, something that typically teenagers want to gain back, and that's why they start experimenting with drugs, is because they're going, something's magical in here, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe it's an elemental being, whatever, and that leads to magic mushrooms and other things of that nature. Psychedelic drugs, I guess I should be more specific. And that helps us to reconnect actually to the natural world and the magical world. These psychoactive plants are connectors to the magical realms. That's just obvious. It's so obvious when you do it. So much of my life I'm trying to deprogram out all of this stuff we've been thrown at us about, like, this is a drug, that's not. It's like, come on, every food that people are eating every day is a drug. The sugar, the chemicals, hardcore drugs. Anyway, this magical reality pervades everything. It's around us all the time. I'll do videos on mana on YouTube. I'll show people fantastic waterfalls in Hawaii or in this amazing country of Iceland to try to just activate that. So in this film, it's activated. We've imbued every single scene in this film with that magic, and it's good magic. It's the right kind of magic. It's the magic that makes life worth living. And that's what this film's about. It's about not only getting a message across, but every scene is designed to help you get back to the magic of your everyday life. It's all around you, all the time.
That is so cool, David.
Thank you. That really summarizes it well. I mean, that's really what Iceland 1111 is. It brings you back to the magical realms, and it brings you back through the sounds and through the visuals of that film, and it's just so fun. It's like a cool expression. It's a creative expression of something that's been deep in my heart for so long. The magical reality. How do you share that with people? Well, how about we do it through a film? And I think we did that.
I think you did too. I mean, that's what I felt. It reminded me of, like I said, it was like a meditation or a contemplation or a tuning fork where, and like you said in the film, it's like it's energizing, it's connecting you to this magic reality. Every scene, just the aerial shots and the beauty of nature, and you watching you and your crew just explore Iceland and reconnect to it. It was very inspiring, and that's what I wanted to share. And I wanted to have you on the show because is such an inspiring thing. And I thought this is a great thing to share. This is the type of film that you want to spread, that you want to share with people, because it is like that tuning fork. It is inspiring for you. You don't have to go to Iceland, although if you can, great, but go connect to nature. Go out in your backyard. Go out where you can and reconnect to the earth and touch the earth. If you can find a spring, find a spring. It's a really beautiful love letter that you have written there, you've made with your crew to Iceland, to this earth. And I'm so grateful that you made it. It is a beautiful film. And I want to hear you talk about this magical reality and what it is that we are all striving to connect to. Like you said in the trailer there, that a lot of people will use drugs to try and reconnect, but what they're really looking for is that magic reality.
Yes, and it has to do with our civilization and the general direction of our civilization, which is hyper rational thought. Everything's got to be rationally explained. Everything has to be conventionalized. And when I use the word like scientism, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like it pushes it to a too radical to one side. So, for example, if we have a rational reality, well, then we must have an irrational reality. They define each other.
Mm,
You can't have one without the other.
right.
For example, you'd have 2 plus 2 equals 4. Okay, great. But then you also have pi, 3.1415926535897 and on and on and on and on. It's irrational.
Right. Okay.
So they're together. And this is how the sun and the moon cycles are. They're not exactly perfect. It's, the moon cycle is 29.543 or whatever it is, days. It's not even. And that's the irrational side of reality is very important because that's where we're going to find synchronicity. That's where we find the magic. In our day-to-day life, okay, we got to go to do our work. We got to pay the bills. This is very rational stuff. We've got to balance that out with something that's irrational. We got to get into nature. We got to tune into the magical reality that's there. Now, that reality it's hyper synchronistic, right? Like just like you brought up the Canmore Spring at the beginning. I was just there. What a shot. I mean, of all places, like
Mm,
you could have said any spring on earth, but it was the one I was at yesterday. That's a synchronicity that I find out over the years that I pay attention to those things. Those are clues. And I go, okay, so the next thing, and I just follow synchronicities out. That's a very powerful tool to tap yourself into the magical reality and also to go into nature with an expectation that it is magical. That if you were
mm.
able to take the stuff of the heavens and the stuff of the earth and mix them in a unique way, you could create an amazing fertilizer for the soil or a wonderful medicine for a human being. And that's really what many of the great minds, especially of the 20th century, were doing, like Rudolph Steiner with his biodynamic farming. What he's really prescribing for us, if you really read Steiner, which I have, I love Steiner, he's one of my favorite philosophers of all time, is that he's really prescribing for us a natural form of magic. And so
Mhm.
when I take his advice and I follow that advice of how to create really ideal nutrients for plants, shocking things will happen, like magical. For example, I was growing corn one year and I'm doing all the things with the corn and I'm doing all this, things with the water and spiralizing the water and really interesting year of growing corn. When I shucked the corn and took the outside off, the inside was spiraled.
What?
It was a trip. I have a picture of
No
that, and it was
way.
like, oh my god! It was one of those things where you just go, whoa! It just shocked me to the core. I was like,
Oh man.
whoa. So that tuning into those things, and also what's beautiful about that is what we really can attune to. It's just a wonderful thing to attune to. Is just those small little things like that,
Hmm.
right? It doesn't have to be some big thing. It can be a small little thing where nature goes, here, check this out, and you go, whoa. Whoa. And even all these years later, because that was some years back, that was a decade ago, I'm still reeling from that experience of like, whoa, the cord came out spiraled. What?
That's so cool. That's so cool. So, if people listening want to get a chance to check out 1111 Iceland, you can do so in the show notes and in the links below. I'll leave all the information there so people can check out that film. It really is amazing. It's a great tuning fork, like I said. It's a point of contemplation on the magic of our reality if we connect to it, if we open ourselves, like you said, David. We have that expectation, that perspective to look for those things, and they will show themselves to us. But we have to be open to it. And I love that about 1111 Iceland. It's great.
It's well said. Well said.
And to wrap up my podcast, David, I always like to ask my guests a magic question of my own. So this is a question that I came up with years ago when I was on set. Just kind of we were between scenes, setting up between they're setting up the camera and the lights and such, and we were passing the time. And this is before everyone had cell phones, so we would just hang out and chat. And I came up with this question, and I've been asking all my guests this question. And it's a fun one. So the question goes like this: if you had a magic painting in your house that whenever you looked at this painting, you could feel any feeling that you wanted to feel to any degree that you wanted to feel it, what would the feeling be that you would want to choose? And then what would your painting look like? What colors would be on that painting?
Ooh, good one. Well, I do definitely the red and the blue colors because to me those are the primary colors, those two, and then the whole rainbow in between. And I spent a lot of time writing a book. I've never published it. I'm going to one day, on all the color pigments in nature. It's a voluminous book. It's a reference book. And so I would like to represent all of those colors, the color pigments in the plants, the color pigments in the
Mm.
soil, the color in the ocean, the color in the mountains, the white capped mountaintops. And so what came to mind is an image of a breaking waves and beautiful beach cascading into jungle all the way up into white capped mountains. That was the
Oh,
picture
cool.
that came to mind. And the feeling that I'd love to get from that is a feeling of the mystery,
Mm.
the feeling of that's really what the magical reality is. It's a mystery. There, we have guesses as to what's going on, but ultimately it's just a guess. And to
Mm.
be in that moment of not knowing, in that place of not knowing, but feeling the magic, where it's like the spiraled corn. It's like it's a hypersynchronicity. You're like, what? Huh? That's the feeling.
Beautiful. So it's like how does that feel in your body? If someone's never felt that before, how would you explain that to them, that feeling?
It's like suddenly an intelligence is on you. Some kind of a higher intelligence is on you, and you're like, whoa, what? Like it's such a shocking synchronicity. You're like, it's like something's on you, some intelligence. Like, I'll give you an example of one of these incidents in my life real quickly. I went to visit a guy who was a UFO. He'd been abducted by UFOs or whatever that phenomenon is. I don't know what that phenomenon is, but I wanted to go talk to him. So
Yep.
I'd studied his stuff, and I went and I interviewed him for 4 hours, and I recorded it all. And it was with a friend of mine and another gal who was my roommate at the time. I was living in New York City. This was in Wayne, New Jersey. We drove back to New York City. The information this guy had was so deep and so profound. And we listened to it on the drive back. We listened to the recording. But when I went to put the drive into my computer, something happened on all three devices: my computer, Nick's computer, and the device itself. And they weren't connected. And all of them were blanked. And I was like, we all felt it. And it was just, there was something, it was a hyper synchronicity moment, or some intelligence is like, nope, and just swiped it.
The computers were like blank. They were dead.
No, the files, there was two files, and
Yeah.
they were zeroed out. There was suddenly nothing in them. So, whatever they were like 280 kilobytes, one of them, and the other was like 300 something kilobytes. Suddenly there were both 0 kilobytes on all three devices.
Megabytes or kilobytes is probably
Kilobytes,
pretty.
because it was an audio recording.
Oh,
It might have
okay.
been megabytes. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been a while, but I remember seeing 0 kilobytes and going, "My God, what is going on?"
Wow. Well, I love that, David. Thank you for sharing that. I love asking people this question because it's exciting to hear people's different perspectives of the feeling that is most beautiful to them, most exciting to them, most treasured to them. And I love that picture. And I'm looking forward to that book too. What you're talking about is creating a book of all the colors of nature.
It's so fascinating. I mean, that is what a subject.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, David, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Do you have an event coming up or anything upcoming that you'd like to share with people that they could check out or find more of your work?
One of the things that we'd like to do is we like to lead people in cleanses. New people have never done anything like this before. We take you through a 3-week process. You can do it at home. It's online. We've had as many as 1,000 people join us at once. This last one that I'm doing right now, I'm just finishing it off, was about 440 people, quite a lot of people, but it's really fun. We're all in a group together online. So if you're thinking you want to do something like that, look me up come springtime, and I'll be there for you. We'll do it. You can join our group. We'll do it together.
Awesome. Well, I will leave all your website and your social media links and such in the show notes and below this video so people can check out more of your work. Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks so much. Have the best day ever.
Well, that was a lot of fun for me. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. David is a wonderful man, and he has so much passion for the outdoors, for nature, for food, for life. I loved connecting with him and getting a chance to chat with him about all those things. Lots of fun. If you want to learn more about David, be sure to check out the links below this video and in the show notes of the podcast episode, because I put a lot of effort and time into linking everything and laying it all out there for you. So if you are interested in following up on any of the topics we covered or checking out more of David's work, you can do it all in the description or the show notes of the episode of your podcast player or whatever you're listening on. I want to give a special thank you, as always, to Eskimotion for the use of his song In Dreams. That is the song I use for the intro of my podcast. And I love it because it sets the tone. So thank you, Eskimotion, for that. Also, guys, I will update you on, I got some merch coming out. I got some clothing. I'm actually wearing one of the sweaters right now. I got the prototype or the trial version of it just to see how it looks. It's actually really comfortable. I wear the sweater a lot because it's very warm and very soft. So I'm pleased with the quality of the clothing. And now I'm just going to size the graphic a bit bigger on my sweater here. I think it'll just look better. So I got that coming out soon. I got another podcast coming out with Tim Chasen from the East Pointers. He's up next. That's a lot of fun too. We play some of the East Pointers music on the podcast and chat with him about life and about making music and being an artist and a fiddle player. So that's a lot of fun. Look forward to sharing that with you all. And I want to wish you guys all the best. Thank you so much for checking out this episode. Thanks for your support. It means a lot to me. I hope you guys have a great one today. I wish you lots of strength and courage and love and passion for life. All the best, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.